You're standing by a fire 50,000 years ago. The woman next to you is your wife, or at least the closest thing your ancestors had to that word. The question is, was she the only one? And were you the only one for her? This is one of those questions that sounds simple, but gets messier the more you pull on it. And the answer, once you actually dig into the biology, the archaeology, the primatology, and the cross-cultural evidence, is one of those answers that satisfies nobody completely, which is usually a sign that it's probably accurate. The short answer, kind of, with a lot of variation. The long answer is this entire video. Here's the strangest thing you're about to hear. You don't need a time machine to know how our ancestors mated. You just need a scale and a measuring tape. Why? Because every mating system in nature leaves its own fingerprint on the body of the species that practices it. No documents needed. No written record. The body is the fossil of behavior. Take gorillas. Males weigh almost twice as much as females. Why? Because in a system where one dominant male owns an entire group of females and has to fight to keep that position, bigger males keep winning. Natural selection just keeps breeding giants, generation after generation. In truly monogamous species, on the other hand, males and females are almost the same size. There's no advantage to being bigger if you don't have to compete with anyone for a mate. Now, look at humans. The average man is about 15 to 20% heavier than the average woman, and 5 to 7% taller. Not as extreme as gorillas, but nowhere near as flat as the truly monogamous species. Our bodies are telling us something. Our ancestors weren't fully faithful, and they weren't fully like gorillas either. We're floating somewhere in between. There's a second biological clue. And honestly, it's an even more intimate one: testicle size. Sounds strange? But here's the logic. If females of a species regularly mate with multiple males in quick succession, then different males' sperm end up competing inside her body. The more intense that competition, the bigger the testicles get relative to body size, because you need more soldiers in that race. Chimpanzees, wildly promiscuous, have enormous testicles for their size. Gorillas, where only one male ever mates, have tiny ones. Nothing to compete for. Humans, right in the middle. Bigger than gorillas, meaning some sperm competition happened in our evolutionary past. Smaller than chimps, meaning we were never that promiscuous. Put both clues together, and the picture is clear. Humans evolved in a mating system that was never fully monogamous and never fully promiscuous. Something messier, sitting right between the two extremes. Now here's the part that gets uncomfortable for anyone who wants a tidy answer. Across hundreds of human cultures studied by anthropologists, roughly 80 to 85% formally allow a man to have more than one wife. 80%. That number gets thrown around as proof that polygyny is our true nature, and monogamy is just a modern cultural cage. But strip away the context, and that statistic is almost misleading. First, permitting polygyny is not the same as everyone practicing it. Even in societies that allow multiple wives, most actual relationships are still monogamous. Polygyny, when it happens, is concentrated among high-status men who can afford it. Most men in most societies, most of the time, had exactly one partner. Second, and this is the part people almost never mention, heavily polygynous societies tend to be agricultural or pastoral ones, where wealth can pile up and inequality can grow. Hunter-gatherer societies, which is how humans lived for the overwhelming majority of our evolutionary history, show much lower rates of polygyny. Look at the environment humans actually evolved in, and the picture tilts hard towards something closer to flexible monogamy. Third, roughly 15 to 20% of documented human societies enforce monogamy as a cultural norm. That's not a small number. It shows up independently again and again in unrelated cultures. That's not something you can wave away as just a Western invention. Here's where the evolutionary logic gets genuinely interesting. Picture a strongly polygynous society. The highest status men monopolize most of the women. The result? A large pool of men at the bottom with no partner, and nothing to lose. And a group of men with nothing to lose, willing to take any risk to change that, is never good news for a community's stability. They fight more. They take more dangerous risks. They break down cooperation. Enforced monogamy reduces that inequality. It gives lower status men a shot at a partner they'd never get in a fully polygynous system. That lowers their incentive to cause chaos and raises their investment in the group's shared welfare. In other words, monogamy isn't natural in the sense of being biologically inevitable. It's a social technology, a set of rules invented independently in different places because it solves a real coordination problem. It was invented, not innate, but things that are invented can still work extremely well. Here's probably the most shocking number in this entire story. Y chromosome studies, tracing the male line, father to son, found something almost unbelievable. One man who lived roughly 4,000 to 5,000 years ago on the Eurasian steppe has somewhere between 16 and 19 million male line descendants alive today, 19 million people, from one man. That's not random variation in a population. That's the signature of an extremely stratified society where a handful of men had endless children with endless women, while most other men had none at all. Genes don't lie, even when there's no written record. And here's the twist. When humans shifted from hunting and gathering to farming, when land and livestock became things you could own and hand down to your sons, reproductive inequality among men didn't shrink. It grew. The more there is to own, the wider the door opens for polygyny. In hunter-gatherer societies, where personal wealth couldn't really pile up, and sharing was the norm, reproductive inequality among men was much lower. You can't support multiple wives if you can't accumulate more than your neighbor. If bones and testicles are the physical fossils, there's another kind, buried even deeper, the jealousy you feel right now. Jealousy isn't a random emotion. It evolved to respond to one specific threat, losing a partner or a partner's investment to a rival. You don't evolve a mechanism for a threat that never happened. And here's the strange part. Jealousy doesn't look the same in men and women. Across cultures, men report more intense jealousy over sexual infidelity, the idea that a partner slept with someone else. Women report more intense jealousy over emotional infidelity, the idea that a partner formed a deep emotional bond with someone else. Why the difference? Because the reproductive stakes were different for each. For a man, sexual infidelity risked investing resources in a child that wasn't his. For a woman, emotional infidelity risked her partner redirecting all his resources toward another woman and her children. The jealousy you feel right now thinking about betrayal is living evidence, written in emotion instead of stone or bone, of the world your ancestors actually lived in. There's one thing early evolutionary theories got wrong for decades: the role of women choosing. Women in hunter-gatherer societies were never passive bystanders watching men fight it out. They actively expressed preferences, formed alliances to support those choices, and refused pairings that weren't in their interest. And in a small group, where everyone watches everyone, it's very hard for a man to fake being someone he isn't. Women in small bands had more real information about a potential partner's actual behavior than most people ever get in a large, anonymous modern society. So after all of that, the bones, the testicles, the 80%, the 19 million descendants, the jealousy, the women choosing, what's the actual answer? Ancient humans mostly had one primary partner at a time. That bond was real, emotionally significant, functionally important, and present in every human society ever documented. But that bond was almost never exclusive in the way modern monogamy defines exclusivity. Relationships outside the pair happened, not absent, just managed. Evolutionary biologists call this facultative monogamy with variation. Not a catchy name, but an accurate one. This isn't a comfortable answer for anyone hoping science would simply confirm the lifestyle they already believe in. It doesn't prove strict monogamy is the one true human default. It doesn't prove non-monogamy is the real evolutionary baseline that modern culture ruined. What it tells everyone, equally, is that the evidence is messy, the history is messy, and human sexual behavior has always been more variable than any simple story can hold. The pair bond is real. Exclusivity is negotiable. And the exact shape of any relationship, including yours, gets worked out between biology, culture, and circumstance in ways no formula ever settles cleanly. If you've ever been in a relationship, that's probably not news to you.